Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so wonderful to be here with you and everyone else. My name is Naomi. I am logging in from India, Bangalore, the south of India to be precise. I am a DEI consultant and also the founder of Life at Optimum, which is a platform that I began in 2016 that was geared towards women and bringing out everything that is the best or most optimum in a woman that she chooses to be. I did this in 2016 because when I became a mother, and this was way back in 2009 with my first child, I realized that transition to motherhood can lead to a loss of self in a woman, and often does. And there is a bit of an identity crisis that happens. And if there is no lack of, if there's not enough support from family, from the partner, it can be really a stage that's very, very isolating, very confusing for a woman. She needs a lot of support at this time. So when I became a mom, I went through this a mild episode of baby blues. I loved my daughter. It had nothing to do with the love for my child, but it felt like my personal self was getting lost somewhere. I have had the great fortune to have a wonderful mother who recognized what was happening. And she said to me, she said, Naomi, whatever you do, live for yourself too. And she said, take care of you before you can take care of others. And that is what led me to do at that time a teacher training course in yoga. It was a time when I would step out of the home for about 1.5 hours, and it brought me back to myself, just being by myself, doing something that was not connected to my home and my child was very important for me because it led me back to myself, and that then filled my own cup. And because my cup was a bit full, I was able to go back and give to my daughter and give to my family in a much, much better way. Now, when a woman goes through this crisis, when a woman is struggling with the transition to motherhood, she's often judged and shamed for it. And that is when I began to blog and to write. I wrote a self-help book for women published by HarperCollins called Mom Me, How I Learned to Love My Babies, Survive My Toddlers, and Learn to Love Myself, because we are at the root of everything that we do. That journey then crystallized into starting my own consultancy in 2016. It took 5 years. It was a long time. 2009, this journey began in my heart. It took till 2016 before I had the courage and the purpose and the conviction that I wanted to work around and with women. Women have my heart because I feel women bear a lot. I stand very strongly for a woman's right to live by how by what she wants rather than how she should. Should is prescribed by society. Should is given to us by culture. Should is quite frankly, very often patriarchal. A woman has a right to her wants, her dreams, her aspirations, her right to rest, her right to have ambition. And, so that is why I started life at Optimum. How can we optimize our best selves? How can we navigate this eternal struggle between the work, between our home, and between our own dreams? And that is in 2016. And as I started working with corporate companies, doing programs on managing expectations, taking control of our own growth, micro steps to ourselves, self-care, integrating, because it's the integration of life and work and ourselves, I understood that within the DEI pillar, diversity, equity, inclusion, this was falling under gender. So I worked with women and various women-led social programs on everything from advocating for ourselves, developing a voice, setting boundaries, learning to say no, because we are people pleasers. And coming from an Asian culture, from an Indian culture, it's very, very hard for us to say no to the family. How do we set boundaries? What do boundaries mean? All of that. So I did that till 2020, and I continue to do it. But in 2020, the pandemic struck, and mental health and well-being really came into the focus of the world. And I realized that everything that I was doing for a woman was centered around her well-being. Well-being, if a woman is well, then everyone around her is well, and she deserves to be well within herself. So I began to sort of become very much, I began to sort of become more and more involved with mental health and well-being for women, but also to others, for everybody, because society as a whole was really, really struggling. The pandemic left a lot of us isolated. As an entrepreneur and a sole businesswoman, I definitely felt it. I was so isolated during the pandemic that I said, I'm going to change my model. I'm going to work with another organization as a consultant, because I was so desperate for collaboration and teamwork and a sense of community. We need that. But it had to be an organization in diversity, equity, inclusion. And so in 2022, it's been a year plus now, I started work with an organization called Pride Circle as a consultant. So I consult with them part-time, and I do my life at Optimum work. And in Pride Circle, it is an organization that champions LGBT plus inclusion. And that is become, I was always an advocate for the LGBT plus community, but I realized only when I joined Pride Circle that it was not important, that it was not enough to be a passive ally. I was being a passive ally. It's important to be an active ally, and how that journey shapes experiences with the community, helps to uplift and empower, and it also shaped me. So that's my story. Now I'm an LGBT plus consultant. I'm a mental health and well-being advocate. My heart will always lie with women. I speak about women's right and everybody's right to not be okay, and to seek help, and a woman's right to advocate for herself, live a life of want. She too has that right. That's at the heart of what I do.
I love that. Man, what a journey you've been on. And it's just so beautiful to watch your story unfold in you finding your space in the world and now empowering other women to do the same thing. So how does social change agency ensure diversity is at the forefront of your strategy development for creating social impact?
Ask me that question again, Gertrude, please.
How does the social change agency
yes,
ensure diversity is at the forefront of your strategy development for social impact?
Right. So I'm going to speak from a social media perspective. I'm going to talk from a digital perspective, especially with regard to platforms like Instagram and that whole revolution, which has made it possible for small entrepreneurs and for every person who dares to dream and think of a better, more equitable world. It gives us all a platform to do so. It helps us to amplify our voices. And that is the route that I have personally taken. even when work was not going well for me, I used the voice of LinkedIn and I used the voice of Instagram to talk about women, their wants, the right to be not okay. So many things. The guilt that women undergo, the guilt that we inherit from society because we think that we're failing our partners, our families, guilt at what cost? So my voice that I developed, and as I spoke for a woman's right and for everybody's right to live the lives that they want, develop self-esteem and self-worth, because this is something that gets really hit when it comes to DEI, whether it's women, LGBTQ plus community, persons with disability. There are huge self-esteem and self-worth issues because these are inherited prejudices and stereotypes from society.
Yes.
Digital media has allowed me, and I see that happening across the platform, whether whoever you are, if you can start a digital conversation, and if you're true and you're authentic, and if you've got good content, people will follow. And people then spread the message further. So that's been for me a huge shift in my own personal journey. And it's helped me to reach a wide range of audience. And it is what made me go from women to LGBT plus to everybody, because I can feel that the audience is growing because the message is resonating with everyone. Yeah.
So in what ways do you support change makers from diverse backgrounds, like the communities you've talked about, to amplify their impact on issues that they are passionate about?
So I do a lot of mentoring. So based on the clips and the videos that I release, I get pings, asking for help or for mentoring or for some sort of personal coaching from women and actually some members of the LGBT plus community now increasingly. They often want to address self-worth issues that hold them back. They're not able to advocate for themselves. They find themselves struggling to put their hands up for promotions or any sort of dream. And then they want to understand how they can do it. So I work with them on the blocks that are holding them back. Yes. Why do they feel that they're not able to have a voice? What is the fear that is preventing them? Is it it's quite a journey, but so we explore and we unpack. Well, it often comes down to what we inherit from society and from our families. Yes. And a big thing that I do so I do individual mentorship and through programs, and I also run programs, is on developing our inner voice and changing the voice, which is one of inner critic, which often criticizes us and says, you don't deserve to put your hand up for that, or you could have done that, you did that presentation, or you spoke so badly. Changing that inner critic to one of inner compassion and saying, yes, you might fail, but you have every right to try. You learn something. Developing a compassionate voice that gives us permission to fail, because we're not going to get it right, but we'll never get it right if we don't start. Yeah. So I do a lot of work on changing the inner voice to one of inner compassion, which is less judgmental, and a lot of work around self-acceptance. And this is done through mentorship individually and through sessions that I run on radical self-acceptance and the inner critic. As I said, there are two voices in our head, the wolf that pulls us down and shames us, and it reduces us, it destroys us often, and the wolf that is kind and compassionate. And if you feed the right wolf, the right thought, that forms a platform for courage, for resilience, for trying and retrying. I mean, how many times do we have to fail before we get it right, Gertrude? We don't get it right. No, this has been my journey is paved with failure and, so-called failure. Yes.
So what are some of the most significant challenges that you face in promoting diversity within the sectors that you work in? And how do you overcome those challenges?
So I work a lot with corporate companies. And because DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and mental health and well-being are core values of mine, and because I inhabit this world so fully, and I speak to people like you're champions for it, we tend to go around in this cloud that everybody has the same value. Yeah. And a real challenge is when I speak to organizations, and it's a tick box. People are doing it because, you know what, it's in vogue to do it right now, because it's the right thing to do because of optics. Let's face it, DEI is right now, it's the thing. And I can see from the conversation that they're not really vested. And that is such a challenge. How do you move people to giving this its due? And they often ask me, what's the business case? What's the business case? And I start with the human case, and that's not good enough. That's hard. So a personal challenge is to stay passionate and motivated despite the fact that you've got a very cynical and jaded audience on the other side. And the other thing is not to go for conviction on day one. It's okay. It's all right. I'm like, all right, if you're doing it as a tick box, then that's good enough. Let me get in the door. Let's start our sessions. Let's develop a program. It's okay if you're not convinced today, but over time you might be. We need to do more of these sessions. We have to get people in from diverse backgrounds to share their stories, because story building, empathy building, all of that comes. But I think the hardest challenge for me is like to be a crusader and not expect everyone else to be a crusader, and to say that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. Let's just get the foot in the door and let's start the work. It'll happen. It's going to take time. It'll happen. Yeah.
I love that.
It's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah. So what innovative approaches has your organization taken to be an inclusive consultancy in the social change arena, especially when you're helping the LGBTQ community?
Yeah. So with Pride Circle, there's a lot of work around education and so around a lot of work around colleges. We have a team that works with the youth from college on their LGBT plus clubs and things like that. We connect with them, we train them, we expose them to companies, to corporate organizations who are diversity focused and who are interested in hiring from this talent pool. At the end of the day, I know you champion education very firmly and entrepreneurship and jobs. This is where the difference is going to come in. So we need companies to hire from this particular talent pool and give them the kind of support that they need, because a lot of them require additional support, whether it's presentation skills or speaking skills or technical skills. So we work a lot with education, connecting the education institutions and the youth, LGBT plus youth, to the right organization. We do a lot. We also do work in community building. We work with NGOs who work with transgender people in, providing them from basic things like shelter, but also education and upskilling, basic skills, whether it's beauty parlor for the transgender work, training as a beautician, training as a salesperson, whatever it might be, basic computer literacy skills, financial skills, running an online bank account, all of these things. We partner with certain NGOs, and again, we connect them back to a corporate who will then fund this, because a lot of corporates have CSR budgets. Corporate social responsibility is a big thing. So we serve as the middle path, and we run a cohort with the corporate and the NGO for 6 months at a time, because it takes a minimum of 6 months for anything to actually land. Finding a place, finding the facilitator, getting the 30 people cohort coming in at a time. The computers, the laptops have to be funded. For food during the course. So we do that as well. And then, so that's the CSR angle, the education angle. So it's quite a 360-degree approach. We also educate companies on how to hire and of course on tackling bias within organizations. A lot of microaggressions that happen in organizations that cause a lot of people to leave because they feel discriminated against. I mean, we have so many stories of transgender people who are scientists or chemists who are then told, we'll put you in reception. But why? When the profile is that of a scientist, So a lot of that transgender people who work in corporate organizations who are then followed around, who are made fun of if that organization does not have a gender neutral toilet, for example. All of this becomes issues. So we do a lot of training on tackling bias within organizations, so as well as policy change, like advocating for policy and measures like same-sex gender affirmation surgery, making a posh prevention of sexual harassment at work, not just women, but making it gender neutral, things like that.
So the intersection of mental health and DEI, how do you integrate your expertise in mental health with DEI strategies in the workplace?
So this is just a very emerging, it's at its nascent stages. It's mental health and well-being is something that, of course, the pandemic has thrown into light. Corporate organizations are advocating heavily for employee well-being, and yet it's hard because there's a lot of stigma that's associated with mental health and well-being, to say that I'm not okay and I need support. So the shift, before you can have a lot of corporates, a lot of organizations have EAP, employee assistance programs, where they sign up for third parties and they provide free counseling. The issue is that not many people are using the free counseling. They're also providing free access to digital apps like Calm and sleep apps and things like that. Those are more being used. However, we have found that unless this becomes, mental health and well-being becomes a core value of the organization from the top, it's like DEI, and it's also mental health and well-being, and it's promoted from the top down with repeated communication, with personal story shares, with over-communicating, doing podcasts on things like World Mental Health Days, with stories of senior leaders who have struggled through, let's say, depression or anxiety or baby blues. Or mental health is anything that makes us feel unwell, right? Makes us feel that we can't cope at that point in our lives. But it's very much it's a very dynamic thing. It can change with the right support. Unless we don't have those stories from our top leadership, that culture is never going to be embedded. So it is embedded with DEI when it is shouted out from the top, from the CEO down, that we value our employees' well-being. When policies are put into place, like well-being leave, a lot of companies are doing well-being leave, like Standard Chartered, like NatWest, others. Take your 10 days of well-being leave. It is mandatory. Then your policy supports your talk. Otherwise, your talk is empty. And then we have story share from powerful people, because when leadership at the top says, I too struggled, I am going through this, I am taking medication and I'm the better for it, it gives permission for others also to open up and say, all right, then I trust this organization. Otherwise, what we've seen is that mental health lines are set up and nobody uses them. Now, when it comes to intersection, we have to acknowledge that certain communities are more vulnerable. Women are vulnerable to depression. We know that because of a lot of isolation, because they handle their work life and their family life mostly on their own, especially in Asian countries. The expectation, there's just no stop for a woman. She leaves her day job and she's into her home job. And that's very, very draining. Huge sense of isolation. There's domestic violence. There's guilt for not feeling happy with, there are women, so many women struggle with the fact that they're not happy being at home, and then they feel guilty because they don't seemingly of course they love their children, they're just tired and drained and need help. So that's where women and mental health come into the picture in a big way. With the LGBT plus, there are huge issues around anxiety, around lack of confidence and self-worth. Anxiety is a big thing, and panic attack, because they're constantly vigilant. Am I safe? Am I unsafe? Psychological safety, if it's not there, and you breathe it in from the day that you sort of understand that you are, identifying as a gay person, and then you're constantly seeking. You go through a lot of judgment, a lot of shame, and you don't feel safe. So that leads to a lot of panic and anxiety attacks. So this is the intersection of mental health and LGBT plus community, mental health and women, of course, our men as well, being providers, that whole pressure. And then when they lose jobs, not being able to speak about it because a man is supposed to be strong, and that whole loss of self, that leads them to substance abuse and also huge depression and panic, but they silently suffer. I'd like to bring the men into the conversation as well. This is something that, so it's all there. So it needs to be addressed continuously.
So let's talk a little bit about your book, Mami. Can you share some key insights from your book? Mum Me, How to Raise Babies, Survive by My Toddlers, and Learn to Love Myself, particularly
Yes,
in
yes.
relation to women's well-being and self-care.
Thank you. Yes. So when I wrote the book, I wanted the purpose of this was I wanted it to be very empathetic towards a woman's transition to becoming a mom. I wanted women. I struggled with breastfeeding, for instance. I thought I was
Okay.
supposed to like literally pop the baby out and have this amazingly bonding experience with breastfeeding. And I found it very, very hard. And then I thought that there was something wrong with me because I was not able to do it so easily. Typical issues a lot of women face. And I
Yeah.
wanted to highlight that it's okay. It's okay if it's not instinctual to us. It needs to be taught. It can be taught. There are nurses for this. Let's not judge ourselves. It doesn't mean we're bad moms. So the purpose was, don't suffer in silence. It's okay. Let's get the help that we all need to be able to do this so that we can continue to function as mothers.
Yes.
That was, as I did a lot of, there's a whole chapter dedicated on breastfeeding because this is something that a lot of women struggle with, and they struggle with alone. In conservative societies, there's also judgment by others for not being able to do this well. There's something wrong with you. I also wanted to focus on baby blues and PTSD. Again, which again I've put dedicated chapters to, saying this is not about your love for the child.
Yeah.
This is nothing to do with that. This is coming up because of a whole range of biological and chemical changes that you are going through, that we are going through in our bodies. Let's be compassionate. We need support. And I've cited case studies of women who've had the support of their husbands or partners and their family members. And what a huge difference that's made, because in 3-4 months' time, they've been okay. And they've been able to, pick it up again and feel all right and feel love rather than overwhelm and sadness. There is a chemical and biological reason. So there are tips about navigating baby blues and PTSD, seeking help. And absolutely at the core of this was to normalize it. It's not just you. It's a whole bunch of us. And finally, I also advocated for fitness. It's a core part of a woman's well-being. It's important to sort of nurture, look after your body. We have to make our bodies strong. Again, pregnancy does take a toll on the body. So in 6 months, whenever we're able to, go back, get out there, slowly, in measurable steps, whatever's working for you, to start doing it. It's very important. And loving, and of course, the core of it is take time out for yourself. You do not belong completely to your family and to your child. You belong first to yourself. With, of course, many tips on structure. There's, of course, lots of tips on structure and routine, scheduling, how to make schedules, how to make menus, how to have a rainbow diet. Your plate should be colorful, so there's multiple minerals going in you. So, lots of very sort of, basic tips like that, structure, routine, schedule. But at the heart of it is a woman's sense of herself, like look after yourself.
Okay, so let's finish our interview with my last question for you here. You've shared so much. Can you elaborate on the work that you've done by Optimum in enhancing mental health and how it contributes to the overall DEI efforts in organizations?
Yeah. When an organization works with me, now the sessions are open to all, and not only to women, which I think is actually a very healthy sign.
Yes.
It contributes to an overall DEI focus within an organization because it facilitates a dialogue. When I do a session on work-life integration, and I say that, we prioritize different things at different times. We cannot prioritize all. Depends on our life journey and our life stage. It gives permission for women who've got, for example, elder care or to take care of, or very young children, toddlers and under, who also faced with a promotion, was struggling at work, to be able to say, when we say that the career journey is not linear, it's like a jungle gym. It's crisscrossing all over the place. It's okay to pause and just be where you are, stay in the workforce. You don't have to take on that next project till your babies are bigger, and you can do it. It
Yeah.
also it enables men, because then they say, what do you need to be able to stay in your job? And women say, we need support. We
Yeah.
need someone to feed the child. And then for the men to be part of that discussion. At the same time, men, we need to have a dialogue with men. Men are not the enemy. It promotes allyship, because men too say that we are providing support, but she wants to do it all by herself.
So,
So then we have to let go of our own perfectionism, our own inherited values by society. So when
yeah.
we say DEI, it's to facilitate dialogue with conversations on mental health about our day-to-day living, what helps us to feel seen and supported.
Yeah.
As a member, if somebody on the panel is from the LGBT plus community and wants to say that over the weekend I went to a wedding with my partner, and my partner
Yes.
is a lesbian woman, then when we talk about that, it enhances awareness, sensitization. That
Yeah.
let's not say spouse, let's not automatically assume it's husband and wife. So this is it. So constant dialogue, constant conversation. It's the only way that a DEI can become embedded into people's daily lives and daily consciousness. And
Fantastic.
all of my sessions are focused on that. Yeah.
Wow, Naomi, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. I have your website displayed at the bottom of the screen. If anybody out there is looking for support, is looking for a DEI consultant, here is an amazing resource that you can tap into. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. Thank you very much. Wishing you the best.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is connecting you with people from all over the globe, bringing inspiration, knowledge, skills. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview another amazing person. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay